Welcome to Pomegranate Radio with your host, Jonathan Cook.
Good evening, Pomegranate Nation. Jonathan here, along with
Will.
Morgan.
Will.
Once again, boys are back in town, and we just watched one of David Lynch's masterpieces. In fact, what I would argue is David Lynch's masterpiece, Mulholland Drive. Guys, I've seen it probably 24 times now. And I believe I can explain literally everything in the film. Gentlemen, your responses to this film.
I think it would take 24 times for me to be able to explain everything in this film.
Will?
Oh, I don't know. I think it's pretty interesting. I think it's interesting. I mean, I obviously didn't catch everything. It would take a while, I think, to get everything. Like I said to you right afterwards, I think I would like a pen and paper, like to map things out, like for a second watch through, but...
I think that it's a movie that you should just try and keep yourself from thinking about what's happening until it's over.
Yeah, that was my, thinking the entire time.
That's fair.
Like, we got to, the last 20 minutes, and I was like, oh, so this is happening, and this person's in this person's head, and then, I don't know. I mean, I really thought, there was going to be more revelation at the end. You
didn't think the last 20 minutes were revelatory?
I thought
there was going to be a lot more, too.
Well, no, it's I didn't expect it to all be spelled out for me, but there was a lot of revelation in the last 20 minutes, but that, not in the last, 10 minutes, though. It was, so if the last 20 minutes that was, revelation, I thought, personally, to me, the first 10 minutes of that explain more than the last did. When we first get back to the apartment, and obviously you can have your opinion, because you've seen it and you think that you have what you think are the correct answers and everything. And I'm not saying they're not.
I'm pretty sure they are.
But just from my thinking, my understanding.
Okay. So before then, I go into what I interpret the film as being about and what actually happened. Do either of you have any idea? I mean,
So I think that all of the stuff where Rita and what is her name?
Betty originally.
Betty. I think that their whole relationship and all of the stuff that happened at the beginning didn't actually happen.
Oh yeah. I firmly believe that it's in someone's mind.
Yeah. As far as when that's happening in someone's head, I'm not sure. I mean, I have to imagine that it happens in Betty's head because it seems to be all of the things that she wants. She succeeds at acting. She gets her love.
Yeah.
I don't know when. As far as the part of the movie where things are going bad for her, I don't really know when that would have been happening.
Yeah, it's I can place all of the main characters and things where I'm okay, so I think that this is Betty or Diane, as we come to figure out, her fantasy of how things should be or how she wanted things to be. But there are tangential things that I can't place. Mm-hmm. The old people. Obviously I understand
them.
Congratulations.
You can explain everything.
I can.
But and the hitman, I get at the end that she's hiring a hit out on Camilla.
Yeah.
Camilla Rita.
But it's kind of I don't quite understand why the hitman was there taking care of that guy, or whose black book it was, or
Okay, so you guys actually got the main beat right. Basically, the story it's a very simple story. It's a very basic story, and it's told almost entirely in the last 20 minutes of the film. Basically, Diane Selwyn comes to LA from Ontario, Canada, and she has dreams of becoming an actress. She doesn't, as most actresses who come to Hollywood don't become big name actresses. They don't even become anybody. They become waitresses very often. And what happens, though, in the process of trying, she meets Camilla Rhodes and falls in love. Camilla does become the big name actor, the big movie star that she wanted to be, that Diane wanted to be.
Right.
They start a romantic and sexual relationship. And as that goes on, as very often happens in Hollywood, you read about this all the time, an actress, an up-and-coming actress, in this case Camilla Rhodes, basically falls in love with the director of a film. Somebody who is in a position of authority, a position of power, who can do something for her. And as a result, Diane feels jilted, she's jealous, and especially after that dinner party that turns out to be their engagement party, their announcement party, she takes out a hit on Camilla out of anger and jealousy and frustration. She does it very spur of the moment. It's, I think it's very much just, she doesn't know what else to do in that moment.
Right.
She's so frustrated. Well, what then happens is she finds out that the hit has been a success. She finds the key, which was the symbol that the hit was a success. And the morning after that, she goes to bed that night. She dreams the first 2 hours of the film.
Right.
And then the next morning, when she's staring at that, she basically has to confront what she's done.
And kills herself.
Right. And the old people are her guilt manifesting itself. Basically, it's this notion of, you came to LA, you should have been a success. Why weren't you a success? And I mean, they're just so freaky because there's that notion of, oh, you're going to be a success. You're going to be a success.
Right.
When people keep telling you that, and then you turn out not to be a success, you know, that just tears away at you, away at your soul. And then everything else, as you said, was a result of her trying to retool the whole situation and make it this idealized fantasy, this city of dreams romance. And where she ends up saving Camilla and becomes the heroine, becomes this incredible actress. I mean, as we see in that one at the audition scene, I mean, she takes this god-awful scene, this movie scene, and just turns it into something revelatory.
Right. So it's starting to make sense. So just in her fantasy, in like the first 2 hours of the movie, bad things just have to happen to Justin Theroux's character because he's the villain in her eyes. So
she's punishing him.
Yeah, his wife cheats on him, and
which is in fact everything that happens in that last 20 minutes figures into that fantasy.
Right. She feels the pain of her love moving on with someone else.
He even says, she overhears him saying, you know, my wife left me, she gets the pool guy and I get the pool. And he jokes about it, and she turns that into this hugely embarrassing situation for him where he's emasculated, when in fact that's not what happened at all. He ended up getting Camilla as a result of this, and who, you know, so no harm, no foul for him. But she retools it into humiliation and emasculation. Right.
And so then what was the having to have Camilla as the star of the movie? Was that just her still building her up in like the fantasy? Like the whole part where they go to Justin Theroux's character and say, this is who has to be the star of your movie.
She retooled it so that Camilla Rhodes was somebody else. She basically strips the actual Camilla and strips her of her own identity by giving her amnesia and turns her into a figure that's entirely subservient, entirely reliant on Betty's character, on Diane's character in the fantasy. And it's an inversion of their relationship in real life. In their real life situation, Diane depended on Camilla for jobs. And when it turns out that their romance was over, part of her probably feared that the jobs were over as well, that she really was going to be a failure.
Makes sense. So whose Black Book was it?
That, I admitted during the movie that there are some explanations I have that are tenuous at best. Basically, he had it when he met with her in the diner. When she hired the hitman to kill Camilla, she saw it on the table with him.
Oh, was it in that scene?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was on the table. She puts it into the fantasy and explains it. Okay? In fact, what she does with the hitman is really interesting because he's not the one that kills Camilla.
Right.
He's the guy that is sent to deal with the guy who did kill her, or rather tried to kill her and failed. All right,
Okay.
that's the
so he's being told the story like, so we were going to put a hit out on this woman, and the car accident happened.
Yeah, that's why he kept saying the car accident. Can you believe that happened?
Mm-hmm.
They went to kill her. That's why the one guy pulls a gun and says, "Get out of the car." Then the other kids slam into the limo and basically muck up the whole works.
Right. And so, was the guy that visited the director's house and like punched Billy Ray Cyrus and his wife just like an extension of him being punished and like muscled into a bad scenario? It's interesting.
So, if the blue key... So, is the blue key that was in the purse with the money the same...
No.
Supposed to be the same blue key that like was on the coffee table? And if so, what is the box?
Okay. The box, the key, the explanation for the key in the box goes back to when she asks, "What does it open?" All right?
Okay.
She asks the hitman in real life. He shows her a key and says, "You'll find this when it's done." And she asks, "What does it open?" And he starts laughing. Because the reality is, it doesn't open anything.
Right.
What it opens is, abstractly, a world without Camilla Rhodes in it. That's what it represents. Realization. Well, she refigures that into... She can't actually retool that into something that works for her fantasy. So what it is, instead, is this overarching sword of Damocles kind of thing.
Oh, right.
Where it's this key that's going to open
always
the box,
there.
that's going to release the reality. Essentially, the box is Pandora's box. If you open this, you're going to end the fantasy and you're going to realize what happened.
Right.
Excuse me.
And so what was the Silencio Club?
It's a Hamlet reference.
Okay.
Which is why the film ends with the blue-haired lady saying Silencio, the rest is silence.
Right. Okay.
And Club Silencio, the whole point of that sequence is to say to Betty, to Diane, as she dreams, this is all an illusion. You know it's all an illusion. You're
just still
perfectly
in denial.
happy. Yeah. You're perfectly happy with the fantasy, but it is a fantasy nonetheless. It's not true. It's not what's really happening. And you're not acknowledging what you did. And notice, too, going into that sequence, right before when the love scene occurs, Betty has put Rita in the dream world, in a wig representative and reminiscent of Diane Selwyn. She has essentially recreated her in her own image. She's turned her into Diane Selwyn.
Right.
And
it
really doesn't last.
It's really interesting to me. So it's like it occurs to me that like Rita being like Diane Selwyn, I know someone like this, or I know this name. It's interesting that she would create in her dream world a character that is trying to remind her of her own like humanity and who she is, and like getting her back out of this fantasy to realize it.
I don't think that was intentional, or I don't think that was meant to be part of the fantasy. I think it was a case of reality intruding. Much like the key, it just was there hanging over her, that realization that was just outside of frame.
Right. Kind of like how a person in a coma can hear things, and it influences the things that they might see or experience.
Exactly.
Okay. That's interesting. I mean, like, you know, Fever Dream makes the most sense, obviously.
One thing that every time I've ever explained my view on this, somebody points out is, well, why is Diane Selwyn dead in the dream? Any thoughts on that?
I don't know, like life's over without Camilla. I don't know. It's like, obviously it's representative of something.
Well, yeah.
But I don't know. I don't have a great thought on why exactly she's...
I've always thought kind of it's in part life is over without Camilla and she might as well just shrivel up and die. I also think it's her knowing what this is all leading to. Remember, this happens the night before she actually does commit suicide.
Right.
She's dreaming all this up as if her own mind is telling her, you know where you're going to end up. You know what you're going to do. You know what you want to do right now. You may have killed the woman you love. You may have tried to erase the pain. It didn't help.
Right.
You can't re-fantasize about it. You can't change what it is despite your best efforts. You're going to kill yourself. Her own mind is telling her that.
Right. So everything's just written and done in the beginning, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, what is the monster behind the dumpster? Who were the guys that were at the diner at the beginning that saw it first?
The one guy, the tall guy with the very thick eyebrows, who says he's afraid of what's behind there, was simply a guy that she saw when she was hiring the hitman.
Okay.
Much like the cowboy in the background, literally just not even a bit player, just walks in the background. She sees him. She makes these guys fit her fantasy.
Okay.
The monster, the deformed man, the ugly man, creature, woman, whoever it was, behind the dumpster, behind the diner, is representative of the ugliness hiding behind the beauty of Hollywood. The whole movie really is about how Hollywood is nowhere near the city of dreams, the fantasy world, the La La Land that everybody thinks it is. That it's a place that essentially will destroy a person if they're not careful. And this is the ugliness manifested.
Okay. I mean, that's fine.
You don't buy it.
No, I buy it. I mean,
I can buy into that, yeah.
Either I don't buy it,
or you don't know what else to think about it.
Well, I don't know. It's just like, it seems kind of boring. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you told a simple story in a really convoluted and like a skilled way, you know. Like, it takes a really intelligent, like, director to be able to, like, tell this kind of story.
Oh, absolutely.
With the subtlety that, like, he does. But I don't know, it just seems like, it just seems disappointing, you know, if that's the story being told. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, okay. I don't know, just like,
I think you're wrong on that, but
love.
Okay.
I mean, that's fine. You can be satisfied with it. I just think it's like unrequited love, drastic action, and then you kill yourself, you know. Yeah. And maybe that within itself is a commentary. It's like, I'm going to take this trite, like, trope that has been done over and over and over again, and I'm going to tell it in a way that's not been told before, or in a way that makes you consider different things about it.
Well, I mean, you know, and what I'm gonna call bullshit on what you just said, because I know that one of your favorite directors is Quentin Tarantino.
Right.
Tarantino does nothing original.
Right.
Nothing. There's nothing that he does. None of his stories are particularly interesting if you get right down to them, but he tells it in a very convoluted, unique way. You know, his direction is, before it became, you know, a parody of itself, was just what it was, all style over substance.
Yeah.
And so I find it interesting that you would say that you admire Quentin Tarantino that much and you enjoy his work so much, and then you find this just boring.
Yeah, well, I find his method of storytelling these basic stories more interesting than the way that David Lynch has done it in this movie.
Because it's far more bloody?
Maybe because it's far more bloody. I think a big thing about Quentin Tarantino, like when I talk about him with other people, is I think his movies are really cathartic, that appeals. And maybe that's a really like basic thing. You know, you get that sense of satisfaction in a lot of his movies. And this obviously doesn't leave you with a sense of satisfaction until you go back and think about it. And I'm not saying it's a bad movie. I'm just saying that I don't know if that's what he's doing. I expected more going into it, but you know, it's a thing that I have to like manage expectations going into it. So it's not the fact that I think that Tarantino tells a better story or tells more complicated stories. It's that I enjoy the way that Tarantino tells his stories necessarily more than the way that like David Lynch has done it here. You know, that's my defense of my opinion of that. And I mean, I have more experience with that than with like Tarantino's movies than like David Lynch's movies, obviously. But like I'm not about to write it off or anything. This is just like a first cold take, you know, and I'm not.
True.
I can change my opinions of it as time goes on, but you know.
Morgan?
I don't know. I've just been like sitting here thinking, like it's hard for me to find anything to discuss about the movie because it feels so like a lot of these movies we watch, like we sit down and we talk about them and we have different takes on things. And like, I feel like this is really just like...
What different take can you have?
Once you like hear like someone's opinion and you like kind of feel the same way, like what else could it really be?
Yeah, it's that, and like, I mean, if it could be something else, you're like, your interpretation's already been like poisoned.
Right.
By not to call it poison, has already been influenced by someone else's...
I am toxic. I
Poison in young minds.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's talk then about some of the specifics, some of the more concrete aspects of the film.
Right.
What do we think of the acting? I mean, for my money, Naomi Watts was robbed when she didn't even get nominated for an Oscar for this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. It was amazing.
Well,
you know,
the fact that she plays two completely different characters.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think she was amazing in it, you know, honestly, because like she plays this just dumb one-dimensional character the entire movie, which there's something to be said in that she portrays herself that way in her mind. It's kind of an idyllic personality, but
exactly.
But I think she's amazing, and I really don't think like anyone like barred like Justin Theroux really held a candle to her. I thought what was the name of the actress that played opposite her in Camille?
Laura Elena Herring. You didn't like her.
Well, I didn't feel like she had a part that was really...
She didn't have a lot of emotional range.
It wasn't... I'm not going to dispute that. I'm not going to argue that I disagree with that. I do think that part of that was it's not her movie. She's so central to the film that it seems like she really... like, it's her mystery. It's not her movie. It's
She's just all kind of there and things are happening around.
Yeah.
Right. And another thing to me is, like, it seems like... So, Naomi Watts' characters are like written out in a direction to where you know how to do that to perfection. It's like it's such an extreme, it's like it's so much easier to act extreme and like the extreme emotions than it is to act like in a subtle or just kind of like casual way. So I feel like definitely credit to her, but her role was one that you could express yourself much more and you could demonstrate acting ability more. And maybe with I can't remember her name, the actress that we were just talking about,
Laura Elena Herring.
Yeah, if she, maybe it's just that like the part that Lynch wrote for her is supposed to be that, and obviously he wouldn't have put anything on the screen that he wasn't satisfied with. You know, he's just not that kind of director.
No.
And so he would have done a scene over and over and over until he got what he wanted. So, I mean, there could be a message in that. It's like, obviously, we're not going to get a riveting performance. Not every character is capable of giving you, like, an emotional, like, riveting
Well, not every character needs to.
Exactly. Yeah. And a part for me is, like, it's hard for me to, like, really judge the, like, the quality of someone's acting. Outside of that, you know, it's like, it's really important to be able to do that, the subtle parts that don't need to be moving, to be convincing in that. And if that's the case, like, kind of convinced, you know, 6-7 out of 10, you know.
But what I'll say to that in response, I see where you're coming from, but I look at that last 20 minutes, and Camilla Rhodes is a completely different character from Rita, and we go from this very weak-willed, spineless, you know, docile, demure woman, mousy woman, really, to this conniving, almost sociopathic bitch.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole point of getting Diane Selwyn to the dinner was essentially to humiliate her.
Right.
I mean, that's the whole point of that kiss between Camilla and her new lover, was just to humiliate Diane and say, you know what? You're disposable. You're replaceable. Yeah. And so, I mean, I look at that and I say, I really think that there was a lot more nuance to her performance than, you're necessarily giving her credit for. I think she did what Naomi Watts did. I think it just, because it wasn't her film, it just wasn't as noticeable, maybe.
Yeah, I'll still push back. If that's the case, that she does become this stark character. Oh, and she does. I don't know. It's just, she didn't strike me very much, and there was no moment, and maybe it's intentional, just I didn't. She was fine. I mean, she didn't take me out of the movie at all.
Right, no.
But
I don't think anybody did that.
But Naomi Watts, brought me more into the movie, Sorry.
Morgan?
Dominating.
No, I agree. I think
Thank you.
I think Naomi Watts was really, really good.
Yeah.
I think that she stands out the most, but she's also doing the most.
Mm-hmm.
There weren't really a lot of other people that really needed to do a lot of acting. I felt like they were just kind of there and in the scenes.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I'm not saying they did a poor job or anything, but just, when you have that, outstanding, just,
yeah,
thing, it makes everything else seem a little dimmer.
So, was it an Oscar-worthy performance?
From Naomi Watts?
Yeah.
Oscar nomination worthy, definitely. I mean, I don't know what else was. So this is 2001?
2001.
Do you know
I honestly don't remember what was... I don't remember. I know that...
Maybe it was a powerhouse year. I mean,
It wasn't.
I don't
It
recall.
wasn't, I know that.
I don't know. I mean, that was kind of before, I
know Lynch got a Best Director nomination again.
Which is baffling to me, because you would think that, No.
What?
So if you let me explain it, you'll understand. It's baffling to me that he would get a Best Director nomination and she wouldn't get an actress nomination, because the Academy is more likely to come around to actors doing independent and strange things than they are directors doing independent and strange things.
Yeah.
You gotta let me get there. Okay. Because I think he definitely deserved to be there.
Yeah.
And his skill, he's not...
I can tell you the only reason he didn't win.
What?
Because he was giving the middle finger to the Academy. He was giving the middle finger to all of Hollywood.
Oh, yeah.
The whole thing. I think it was Peter Travers who said that this is a poisonous Valentine to Hollywood.
Okay. Right.
And I think that is probably the best description of this film. And I think Lynch knew that. And it doesn't surprise me that Lynch's next feature work, after he did some truly bizarre internet stuff, I mean, some really bizarre stuff, was the equally bizarre Inland Empire, which was pure independent. I mean, he distributed that himself through his own production company. And he said that he's done making feature films. Yeah. That he's completely done.
Well, it was a critique of the entire Hollywood way of doing things. You know? It was look at what it leads to. It leads to heartbreak and it leads to people doing things they wouldn't otherwise do because of the attention and the.
But here's the thing: I'm not sure it's. I think that it's really a critique of the industry as a whole, independent or otherwise. I think that it's easy to look at Hollywood because they're the big name studios. They're the ones that it's most obvious for. It's the major movie stars that we point at and say, yeah, this is what's going on behind the scenes. But the reality is this happens in every production. It's basically who you know, it's who you're willing to sleep with, what you're willing to do.
It's like a criticism of morality and putting people on a pedestal, to me.
So the 2001 winner for Best Actress was Julia Roberts for Erin Brockovich.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense. Not a terribly good movie. Certainly hasn't stood up at all.
Right.
Didn't it win Best Picture as well?
It got
nominated.
It got nominated. Gladiator won Best Picture.
Yeah, of course.
I think it was second, in the...
Which is funny because Gladiator wasn't a very good picture either.
Right.
Spectacle. It's a spectacle. It's an avatar.
It's an avatar.
It's a spectacle.
It was a movie that was
pretty movie.
It's a long, pretty movie. It was traditional film.
Right.
Which honestly, hey, if La La Land had come out in 2001, La La Land would have won, and not, what was it?
Moonlight.
Was it Moonlight? Yeah.
Yeah.
Which wasn't a very good movie
Well,
at all.
see, this is a great this is a great
it's
thing
politics.
you bring up.
It's all politics, and that I think is in a roundabout way what Lynch was commenting on. Is the politics of movie making.
Well, definitely, yeah. The Oscars this year were very politicized, but La La Land is just exactly what Lynch seeks to criticize. I think because it's
agree.
the whole
I agree.
dancing light and shadows, everythings and everything. And don't get me wrong, I loved La La Land, and I'm just throwing my endorsement in with everyone else who sheepishly enjoyed that movie.
What I've heard, I'm very excited to see it. I've got it sitting on my shelf. I'm very excited to watch it. But I do think it's part of what appeals to people is that it's not this political movie. It's not this issue movie. It's a throwback to the musicals, the idealistic, idyllic musicals of the 30s and 40s.
That's
and 50s.
what it is. It's not trying to tackle an issue or anything. It's trying to be reminiscent and execute a feeling, and it's trying to evoke something.
And that's what movies really were all about from the beginning. They were about making people feel good and evoking emotion from people.
Right.
They weren't about putting middle fingers. You look at Sunset Boulevard. Sunset Boulevard today is regarded as a masterpiece.
Right.
I can't imagine that anybody liked it at the time it came out. A film like that was a giant fuck you to Hollywood from a major Hollywood player.
Right. I don't know. It seems weird because obviously movies were I would say brought about with the original intent to entertain and evoke emotions and everything. But and there are a lot of movies now that do make political statements and do make moral and social take a moral or a social stand. And I'm not convinced that that's a bad thing. It's just not.
I think it is when people say that these are the good movies of the year. I think this past year was a deplorable year for cinema. Yeah. World cinema, not so much. But I think certainly American cinema and certainly what got Oscar nominations, it was a terrible year.
Yeah,
it was, the Oscars this year was nothing more than a response to last year's Oscars so like crap. People got their panties in a bunch because some people were upset that there weren't enough black actors nominated. There weren't enough black films nominated. So all of a sudden you had 3 or 4 black issue movies nominated. And I'm not saying there were bad movies in and of themselves, but they weren't more than the sum of their parts. There was nothing special about them. They're not going to last. They're not going to be remembered as anything other than black movies.
See, I disagree with you in a sense because it was an issue. It was an important issue, but the way that it was handled was absolutely incorrect in my eyes. It's obviously there are lots of black movies and other cultured movies that have been overlooked and actors that have been overlooked because of their race. But I agree with you in the sense that it seemed and I can't speak because I didn't see Moonlight, so I can't speak to whether or not. Well, whether or not it deserved to or not. I'll concede that maybe it did or probably it did, but I don't know. It's a rubber banding.
You think it deserved to win?
I can't say. I don't know. I didn't see it.
Well, you just said you thought that it.
I could concede that. Because I haven't seen it. I'm not going to make the stance that it didn't deserve to win. And
Okay.
What?
No, fair enough.
I'm not prepared to say that a movie doesn't deserve to win an Oscar without seeing it. I'm not going to give my opinion on a movie that I haven't seen just to say that it's rubber banding. I think it's probably rubber banding, but I'm not going to make the moral statement that no, this movie didn't deserve to win. It's the same issue where people are there aren't enough women working here, so they just address the problem of women working there and hire women rather than create a system that brings about to where it's not an issue that more women are being hired. It treats the symptom and not the cause, right. Which is what you're getting at, I think, is you're saying, I acknowledge that there's an issue, but the way that this issue was...
I agree there is an issue.
But the way that it's handled is the problem.
But here's the thing. I go back to something I said months ago when the Ghost in the Shell casting controversy started up. the reality does Hollywood have a racial bias? Yeah. And we care because what possible significance is this issue really? And I say that, and I know that the comments, and I know the criticism, and I know what you're going to say, is that I'm a white guy and I can't possibly understand. But you know what? I'm white, non-Jewish. And you know what? Most of Hollywood's bigwig players are Jewish. I could make an argument that, well, but I'm not going to do that. For one thing, it's anti-Semitic. And for another thing, I don't frankly care. I don't care who's behind the camera. You know? I'm not upset that Idris Elba is playing Roland in The Dark Tower. I think that's a fantastic casting choice.
Right.
I don't think he was cast because he's black. I think he was cast because he's talented.
Right.
And nobody's going to cast Tyler Perry because he's talented.
Right. And see, that's what it gets to, is a matter of them being cast because they're talented and not because of their race. You know, obviously there are roles that like call for, you know, like autobiographical like pictures that call for someone of like a particular race.
Okay.
More often than not. But the issue, like getting to it, is like you said, is getting to a place where people who do have the talent can get hired and aren't looked over because of their race.
Well, Zoe Saldana, I think it was, she wasn't black enough to play Nina Simone in the biopic. She did a great job. I didn't think it was a particularly good movie overall, but I thought she did a good job. But she was lambasted because she's fairer skinned than Nina Simone. Nina Simone was very black.
I don't know. I almost think like,
you know, and I look at that and I think that's just a nonsense issue. Okay, so they hired a black woman to play another black woman, and suddenly your argument is she's not black enough. She's not black enough.
Right, but you can't equate that with the rest of the field of arguments. That's a non sequitur to those. I think that one's a non-issue, but I think
it's all a non-issue.
I know, I can't agree. I just can't agree, you know, because I feel like if we write the whole thing off as a non-issue.
Okay, then explain to me this. Because nobody, despite the number of times I've had this argument with people, nobody can actually articulate for me what the issue is. What is the damage being done by this issue?
I don't know. Just it's not damage to us or like iconoclasm to us.
I get that.
It's
We're
damage.
White males. We run the world.
No.
I've heard that.
No. I don't mean white males. No. Let me articulate my thought so maybe you can understand it.
Use small words and graphs.
Bright
colors.
Left my graphs at home. But what I think the issue is not to the masses, to the public, that we were robbed because a person of color didn't get this role, or a woman didn't get this role, or a person of a certain religion didn't get this role. It's not about like us, which is what I think a lot of people that you talk to like equate it to, because we all want to have a feeling of, oh, we're inclusive because we're going to see a movie with a person of color in it. You know, a lot of people like to
I don't care one way or the other.
A lot of people like to pat themselves on the back for that. They're like, I'm happy with this. I'm good with this. And you know, that's good to have a good feeling about that. But it's about the people in the roles who got passed over. You know, it's like hiring bias. You know, that's the issue that it seems to me. And we shouldn't just let one industry like continue to like arbitrarily get away with it more than like other industries, you know. In my eyes.
Okay.
What do you not agree? Do you understand?
No, that still doesn't make any sense to me. Hiring bias is you hire the person who can do the best job. And in Hollywood, you hire the person who's going to be the biggest draw. Were there people that may have done better jobs than Scarlett Johansson in Ghost in the Shell? Possibly. Although it was a terrible movie from top to bottom, I don't think anybody could have salvaged that role. It was really bad. I was really disappointed with that one. But despite that, who was the biggest box office draw? It was her. It was ScarJo.
I can understand what you're saying. He's not saying that that like there isn't a hiring bias. He's saying that it's not biased because they're not looking for the best actors. Hollywood.
They're looking for the biggest draw,
which is the problem. They're looking for the actor or actress that is gonna like sell the most tickets.
But then if you talk about hiring bias, that's no different than anywhere else. Who's going to do the best job, not necessarily who's best qualified for the job. Who's going to reflect the business the best? Who's going to produce the best? That's the nature of business. Any business.
Yeah, but then you start to like justify a system that's kind of messed up, I think. You know, whenever you say, let's, they want to hire the person that will bring in the most people. Well, because they're white. Well, then you're kind of just like normalizing.
I'm not saying it's because they're white.
Well, not necessarily because they're white.
I'm not going to go see Nina Simone biopic if it doesn't have a black woman in it.
Interesting. I would think you would see it anyway just to see it.
Honestly,
lambast it.
I would, but I mean, I'm not going to go and say this is a serious thing. But I mean, when that happens, and it has happened, you've got Othello played by Orson Welles.
Yeah.
Who was a big white dude.
Yeah. Okay? Didn't Laurence Olivier do it too? I
think Laurence Olivier did. Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot of famous white actors have played Othello.
Right.
You've also got, speaking of Orson Welles, you've got Charlton Heston playing a Hispanic man in brownface.
Right.
Now, that one I can see the outcry. But then, why isn't there an outcry over Orson Welles playing a black man? I'm sorry, not a black man, a Moor.
I don't know. Maybe is more acceptable? No, I definitely see where you're coming from, and I think our ideological difference comes down to
you're a snowflake.
I wouldn't say that.
No, I wouldn't say that either. I like you too much.
Oh, but you know that's a nice little encapsulation of our views on politicizing not necessarily.
Incidentally, it has almost nothing to do with Mulholland Drive.
But yeah, I don't know. But I was gonna say, getting back to Mulholland Drive, it's kind of hard to like suss out things from it. And I think this is one of the like avenues of discussion that it's easy to go down.
Yeah,
is like, you know, how it treats the film industry and how it treats what a movie's role is. And interestingly
enough, and I will concede this, and I think you'll probably agree with it, is that I am basically shooting my own argument in the foot, because I do like this movie. I do think it's incredibly powerful. I think it's incredibly well done. And the reality is, it is a political movie.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
but it's a political movie that the political dimension you can completely ignore, and you're not missing anything.
Right. Absolutely. I think that's just another instrument.
Yeah.
And maybe someday we'll have a longer conversation about. We'll have just an entire segment devoted to what should the role of a movie be? Make these big normative claims.
I think you and I would probably kill each other.
No, I think
I'll just have to sit in the middle.
Keep us from hurting each other. All right, getting back to Mulholland Drive. What do we think of, you know, some of the more mechanical aspects of it? Cinematography. Was it beautifully shot? What do you think? I mean, that was one thing that I liked a lot of the shots, but collectively, I'm not sure how impressed I was.
So, I don't know if this is a theme with the director, but it had a lot of unconventional pan shots.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like. And there was a lot of moments where there was just no sound for extended periods of time.
Mm-hmm.
And those two things always make me, as like a viewer, feel really uneasy.
Yeah.
And for this movie, I feel like it was making me feel uneasy the entire time, and there wasn't really anything to feel uneasy about.
Now, see, I would disagree with that and say that it's this mounting dread that things, despite the surface perfection, that things are not perfect, that there is something rotten underneath it, which is a theme running through all of David Lynch's work.
I thought that it was, I mean, I think that visually you can tell that it was a movie that was made in the 90s. I guess early 2000s.
Yeah.
Probably shot in the 90s.
Right.
99. Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I think as far as the cinematography goes, it was still like a very visually pleasing movie.
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of like weird, like it seemed like it was saturated in the scenes were a lot more colorful than they felt like they needed to be.
Yeah. Well, I can, as you know, because I own this on the original DVD when it came out, and the Criterion Blu-ray is a new 4K remaster that was supervised and color timed by David Lynch. And this version is way more saturated than I remember the original DVD copy being. Now, may just be the limitations of the DVD format, but this is much more eye-popping, especially like the Silencio scene, her hair, the blue hair, the red top on Camilla. Yeah, you like that. I like that too, I'm not gonna lie.
I would be really interested to see how Lynch would make it today, you know, like what choices he would make, because some of it I'm like, either this is a very deliberate choice or this is just the edge of like what is like you can do in a movie at this time. Because like part of me is like, oh, the like pan in shots where there's obviously human shake in the camera. I'm like, there's probably a way around that at that time. So there has to be a reason for him to like have that in there.
Yeah.
Would he do it again that way? Yeah, you know, probably. But cinematography, there were parts of it that I thought were like really great, and there were great shots, and you know, they did motifs well. They did motifs well, and they charged symbols really well. You know, the key and the blonde hair, and so I was a fan of that. But there were no, as a whole, it felt like it didn't all mesh. Like there were parts where I was like, it was like they had enough money to hire a cinematographer that knew what he was doing for these certain sections, and then the rest of it was just like, well, here's a little bit of exposition that's just kind of in there.
I mean, I go back to the love scene, which I would argue is probably one of the best shot love scenes in the past 20 years on cinema, and there are a couple individual shots that I'm really disappointed in, and then a couple that I'm really just intrigued by. There's the silhouette, the nude Laura Elena Herring, silhouetted by the window, and the light from the window, which I remember because of the censorship of her groin in the original release. I remember David Lynch in an interview saying it was supposed to be this beautiful silhouette, and I'm like, okay, it's nice, but it's not particularly.
Well, she walks
exciting.
right through it.
Yeah, just
it's like if there was a pause, like a 3 or 4 second pause,
it might
you would have that silhouette. But it was just like, whoop, whoop, whoop.
But you've got that, which is just pedestrian to me, and then you've got, you know, 2 minutes later, you've got a scene where Naomi Watts is in the background, blurred out, and the focus is entirely on the foreground with Laura Herring, and she's on her back. Naomi Watts is facing the camera, and their lips are perfectly lined up. That moment immediately following the love scene where their lips are still visually touching, they're still connected. She starts talking, and her lips are still there. The shot cuts away, and then it cuts back to a slightly modified, and their lips are now askew. They're breaking apart. And I thought that visually was gorgeous. I thought that set of shots was just fantastic. That was very arresting to me. But then there's so much else that I'm like, yeah. You know,
it's like you were so on there. Was it just that it hit you with this scene, or because it just seems inconsistent?
Yeah,
to me.
It really did.
You know, but
what did we think about the soundtrack?
Okay, so I'm gonna first say I really hate this like era of and like genre of like soundtracks, like the vague synth increasing in volume to the head of the scene and then decreasing. So I didn't like it, but I think it's an extension of not of just finding them really hokey and like tropey, and
I think
go ahead.
I kind of feel the same way, and I think that comes from us just being like, oh, this is a 90s movie.
Yeah, well, and see, that's why I want to establish.
What I will argue in defense of that is when Angelo Badalamenti was first scoring for Lynch, his synthesized strings really weren't the norm. They weren't as tropey as common. During the 80s, certainly there was always that synthy poppy sound,
right?
Very synthesized. You think of Blade Runner with a lot of synthetic sounds, industrial sounds. Even then, Badalamenti's scores always sounded very different, but he's been very, very consistent. His score in this could very easily be lifted and set in Blue Velvet.
Right.
And you know, so I mean, I do see what you're saying, that it sounds tropey, but it may sound tropey because so many people emulated what he was doing.
Yeah, and I'm not necessarily going with... sorry.
I was just going to say I think it's something that like we, because of our like age, think is tropey.
And it is. I mean...
Yeah, but like we recognized that like at the time it was probably not that way.
It wasn't, and to me it wasn't necessarily that it was like a synthesizer like that. It's just, it reminds me a lot of like the way that silent movies were done, you know, where you have the guy playing the piano in the theater, and it gets to a moment and he goes bun bun dun 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 dun, and you know it's really like hype, you know. I thought for how subtle the entire movie was, it was just like the music is telling you that it's weird now, and then just you know the rest of the movie is like, oh, this is subtle, you know, plots within plots, and then the movie hits you in the mouth.
But then you've got the love theme. The love theme, which is a lush and a very swelling sound, but it's
bothersome.
It's very bothersome. It's not a love theme.
Right.
And which is what makes it all the more arresting and all the more effective as a love theme.
But, you know, that kind of goes back to what we said about the cinematography, where it's like, okay, moment of brilliance.
I will concur.
But the rest of the movie is... If you...
Again, it wasn't...
You know, it's not... He's not going to service, like, the people who watch his movies at all. Because he's going to say, if you don't get it... If you don't get it, that's your own damn fault, and you're just too fucking stupid to, like, understand what's going on. So it just seems weird. Like, and obviously David Lynch didn't write the score for it.
No.
So... But it also occurs to me that he's not the kind of person to be dissatisfied with something and say, well, I've already spent the money on this, so we're just going to go with it. And I'm sure that he worked closely...
Well, I mean, it's kind of like the story about David Lynch sitting down with Badalamenti to compose Laura Palmer's theme for Twin Peaks.
Right.
They sat down at a piano, and David Lynch starts talking to him. We're walking through a forest, all right? And the wind is very still, and all we see is darkness in the trees, the soft rustles. And he's playing on the piano, Badalamenti's playing on the piano, and he starts to talk about Laura Palmer walking into frame, and he slowly transitions into something else. And about 5 minutes of that, David Lynch says, "That's brilliant. That's it." And Badalamenti says, "All right, well, I've recorded that. I'll write some ideas down and see what comes out of it." And Lynch is like, "No, that's it. I want that. I want exactly what you played." And you know, and again, I mean, there's a lot of great stories about Lynch filming Twin Peaks. At one point, the lights started flickering. They started breaking on the set, and he said, "Just film it. Just film it. It works for what I want."
Right.
And so. I agree that he is very controlling. He's not going to put something he's dissatisfied with, but I also do think that he will take happy accidents, and I think a lot of it is, in his eyes, just happy accidents. He's just willing to go with it.
Right. And, you know, it's the discussion of what the director wanted and what we think the director was trying to do, and, like, its success in doing that to us. Yeah. Maybe that's exactly what he wanted. Maybe he wanted that, like, dissonance that I perceived, where it's like the movie is subtle, but the music isn't subtle at all.
Yeah.
You know, maybe he wanted that. So if so, then the movie was fine. It's just all about the metric on how you judge the music. But if we judged it on the basis of what the director wanted, we would just be sitting here a lot saying, well, that was great. You know, because
that was great. That's what he wanted.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Fair enough. You know, obviously, this movie probably isn't... I'm not going to say it's not discussion worthy and it's not stimulating conversation. What's interesting is the conversations we're having are all incredibly qualified, or we're going off on a tangent and we're not discussing the movie as much as normally we do. And I find that very interesting. So let's just kind of skip ahead to the final thoughts on this. You know, is it a good movie? Is it something you recommend? Is it something that you're willing to watch again, that you want to watch again? I mean, Morgan, you've been pretty quiet. What do you think?
So I would want to watch it again just because I strongly feel like I'll appreciate it more a second time.
Okay.
I think that it's a good movie, but I don't think that it is accessible. I think that you really have to be a person who's interested in...
Well, thank God we didn't watch Fire Walk with Me.
I think that you really have to be a person who's interested in movies and, like, not just like, oh, I like watching movies, but, like, likes critically thinking and evaluating movies to really enjoy it. Mm-hmm. So I enjoyed it, and I think I would enjoy it even more after seeing it a second time, but I don't know how I would feel about recommending it to the majority.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, actually. It was like, do I think it's a good movie? Probably. Yeah, you know, I would like to watch it again. Because anything that... It's like a maze to me, you know? Anyone who can, like, make a maze has a little bit of talent, especially when they do it, like, with a story.
Okay.
People are going to now tell me that computers are intelligent because they can make mazes, but they are.
They are.
That's another...
Artificially.
Right. But, you know, I wouldn't recommend it to, like, a lot of people.
Okay.
You know, I would want to know the person. You know, there are movies that I enjoy that I'm just like, I don't know anything about you. I'm going to recommend this movie to you. You know, like any David Fincher movie. You know, just go watch that. You know, I mean, maybe those are a little inaccessible. Not much. I think inaccessible in the sense that a lot of people wouldn't hold interest in some of them. Just completely disagree with that.
I think he's about the most mainstream auteur we have.
Yeah, I
think Fincher's an interesting case, and I do agree. It's probably another discussion. But what I will say about him is, there's David Fincher who makes movies, and then there's David Fincher who makes films.
Right.
We've got David Fincher who makes, for example, Panic Room, which is just a very well done thriller, but it's just a movie.
Right.
And then you've got Seven, which is just an immaculately crafted film.
Right.
You've got The Social Network, immaculately crafted film. Then you've got The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, immaculately crafted movie.
Yeah.
You know, so, but I can sort of see what you're saying. I mean, I think there are movies that the mainstream audience aren't going to watch. They're not going to be interested with him. Zodiac's, I mean, I love David Fincher. He's one of my favorite directors, and I can't stand Zodiac. I don't think I've ever stayed awake for the whole thing.
Yeah, it's interesting how he tries to, how I thought, like, you know, how, like, widely that was marketed and, like, how mainstream that was.
But, it was, like, not a mainstream film at all.
Yeah, but anyway, getting back to this movie, I mean, I think probably it's conflated a little, you know, just because it is so unique. And with, like, being so unique, you're going to have people who set it above just for being that unique. You know,
I will agree.
And maybe it deserves that.
I would argue that its reputation is a bit skewed in that, you know, here we are 16 years later and people are still arguing, well, what the hell does it all mean?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I mean, I've known what it's meant. I've been able to explain virtually everything except, yes, perhaps the pink paint on the mailbox, the mail slot, that I've never noticed. I don't think it's a thing, but he thinks it is.
Oh,
but
it might not be.
It may not be. It's not. But I think
there was definitely some color.
Oh no! You're screwing up my theory.
There.
You know, maybe it's not that. You know,
but I mean, my point is, so many people still argue that people don't know what this movie means. That people are still arguing about what it means. To me, I think it's a very straightforward film told in a very convoluted manner.
Right.
And I think that people have latched onto this reputation for its obscurity and its and David Lynch's rampant obfuscation of meaning, and I think that's not entirely justified by the film. And I do agree with both of you in saying that I'm not sure I would recommend it to many people. I think that you do have to appreciate cinema. I think you have to be a real a real film buff in order to appreciate this movie, in order to enjoy it the way I enjoy it. I think people can certainly appreciate it. I mean, both of you admitted that, you know, you think it is a good movie. It's just,
probably,
you know, not necessarily something that you enjoyed about.
Only those with as refined taste as us would
precisely
appreciate it.
But, I mean, I would, you know, I think it's fair to say it's divisive, you know, like a lot of what we watch.
Whoa.
You know.
What a claim! No, I agree. I absolutely agree.
All right. So, what do we want to rate this out of?
I don't know.
Out of 10 blue boxes.
Blue keys. I think.
Blue keys.
Yeah.
All right. So, Morgan, how many blue keys out of 10 would you give this film?
Do me first.
I can't go first because you know what I'd give it.
You're just gonna give it a 10?
I'd give it a 10. I think this is about. I think taken as a whole, it's infinitely more than the sum of its parts, and I think this is one of those films that's just. I think it's as near perfect as you can come. So I give it 10 blue keys out of 10.
This is the part where we learn about what people like in movies, because I don't give it a 10. I'm sorry. I give it like a 6. 6.
You give it a D? You give this movie a D?
I don't know. So I think that, like, the grading scale system is not...
We need some rules about our grading scale.
No, I think it's like a 6 because I think there's definitely something there. So, like, I think over 5 is, like, a decent to, like, good movie.
Okay,
you know?
fair enough.
I mean, like, if you're putting, like, bad movies at 5, we're not on the same, like, scale. But I think I would give it a 6 just because...
I'm pretty sure you gave Troll Hunter a 6, just saying.
Oh, I'm sure I gave Troll Hunter more than a 6.
I'm pretty sure you did too, actually.
But this is a scale on how I enjoy it and how good of a movie I think it is.
All right.
So
go ahead.
I think like a 6 for me is about right because there's something there. There's a lot there,
Okay.
and there's a lot to be like pulled out of the movie, and like there is some discussion about it, and taking all that in, I think builds that up, but it's harder for me either movies that are so obscure the entire time, either in my like eyes at the end are amazing or just really upset me, and this was really unique as it didn't really fall on either of those, and that's been my experience in the past, that they have been really divided. I just didn't enjoy it, and this goes back to it. I have heard so much discussion about this movie that like my perception of it is completely ruined. So like my expectations probably influences a lot of what I think about it. Fair enough. I mean, it's a good movie. Probably should watch it just for the like mind bending aspect of it, to experience David Lynch. But
fair enough. Mo?
So I'm probably gonna give this a 7.5. Because I think that I would have enjoyed it more. Like I said at the beginning, I think that this is a movie that you really will enjoy more if you just don't allow yourself to think that you know what is happening until the movie's over. Mm-hmm. Because that's something that like I kind of did, was I was like, oh, I think this is happening. And then the movie takes a huge turn like 2/3 of the way through. Yeah. And I just spent like the last third of the movie catching up. I think that it's a movie... I think that I'll give it a 7.5 because I do like discussing and like critically thinking about movies. But at the same time, this is one that kind of has... You've got to think about a lot of things at the same time.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Like, you can't just think like, oh, like this person was doing this at this time, because there's so many other things going on that influence like each narrative storyline. Mm-hmm. That I don't know. It's almost like too much of a good thing to me if you are into like those type of movies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, fair enough.
At least from my perspective. But
all right, so anybody have a calculator?
yeah, so
give it an 8. Just call
all
it
right,
8.
we'll give it an 8. Largely because mine skewed it a bit. So
Yeah, so did mine.
you know, we gave it an 8 out of 10 blue keys. Mulholland Drive, directed by David Lynch, starring Naomi Watts, Laura Elena Herring, can never remember her name, Justin Theroux, who I thought was really good in this too.
Yeah, we kind of shorted him.
But that's okay.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
All right, so we'll see you next time. This is Jonathan.
Will.
Morgan.
And Will.
For Pomegranate Radio, have a good night. See you next time.